But we're not gonna get into anything that we discussed with the Teamsters, but right there in that hill.
Very friendly.
That's what we're gonna talk about.
Right, exactly.
I know.
That far, and I don't know.
I'll mention that. This is,
Well, but you were talking about that.
Because it checked the box.
I mean, kind of one of the problems with
because when I talk to the counties, they have such a lack of.
you only listen to two comps.
Since COVID, right?
And COVID is not in the Maine.
That puts his money in.
Right. It's not. Right.
It's just this unbelievable anomaly in
But real estate prices have been going up for years, before COVID as well. Just-
yeah, not like that.
But,
It's a mess.
Keep thinking one more.
This is.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Meeting is now in order. Minutes, resolution 2474 to accept the minutes of April 3rd, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? All in favor? Let's go. Workshop, abatement appeal deliberation, Cray, Palmyra. Is anybody from Palmyra or?
I know that Priscilla from the town office in Palmyra is here.
Hi, Priscilla, thank you for joining
I
us.
don't think, other than Priscilla, I don't think anybody's here from Maine Assessment and Appraisal, Garnet Robinson, and I have not heard from Dean Cray. I'm assuming he may be in Augusta, so.
Yeah, could be.
The last meeting, the commissioners continued their deliberation and made a request for more evidence. The specific request to the town of Palmyra was for historical sales data going back 20 years. And then we also made a request to see if Dean Cray wanted to add any more information, and he did have information on assessments that we have received. And actually, it's my fault. I had received these when he first made his application and neglected to get them to the board. So I emailed those to you last week. You have copies of them. These are certain valuation reports that Mr. Cray compiled from the town of Palmyra around the White's Pond area. So the county's request to the town of Palmyra and to Garnet Robinson to gather more historical sales data, we received a response to that on Monday, and I forwarded it to you in the email, and you also have it in your in front of you right now. In this response, it says that in their opinion, the historical sales data going back 20 years was not readily available and not relevant. So they chose to not respond to that, or they chose to respond to the request in that way. So that should pretty much bring you up to speed as to what you have for evidence at this point.
Any further discussion on Cray and Palmyra?
I still think we need some sort of, not maybe 20 years, but we need some more. If we're gonna continue this, we need more.
Well, I think what we have is enough as far as the actual sales are concerned. And I don't know that we need to go back 20 years. It kind of gets old and stale. So I agree with Robinson on that. But I looked over everything. I felt that there was an issue with the components of the assessment, and that the total evaluation is comprised of the components of the evaluation, so I think we can work with that. I'm mostly concerned with the shore frontage section. If we just looked at White's Pond, to jump from $2,000 a foot down to $300 a foot seems to me to be egregious and quite discriminatory towards residents on the pond. Looking into that further, the pond was broken up into two neighborhoods, which I don't think is appropriate. I think it's one district, the whole town. And let me refer to Turfwolf versus the town of Scarborough. This is in 2014. And it says the assessed value of a property must be equitable. That is, the property, quote, the property must be assessed at a relatively uniform rate with comparable property in the district. The assessors fell short of this standard in its valuation. And what this is from, this reference, it comes from the Braun versus the state that we had with us for the first time. And this was, we had found in favor of Braun. The state appealed the state assessors appealed to the Superior Court, and the Superior Court brought it back to us. We sent it back with some further details. The Superior Court found in our favor, or in Braun's favor. So I looked at that, and so there's besides the Braun, there's within here is a reference to a court case that shows that yes, there is a discriminatory or egregious factor in the method of assessment, at least in my mind, and in some cases, courts. So with that, I would say that the shore frontage portion needs to be adjusted. There's actually three components of assessment. There's the land value, which is broken into three different types of components, and then there's the building value, which again is broken into different compartments of adjustment. So and the third one is, what is the land value, the dwelling description, and then the dwelling condition. So there's those three components, and there are other components within those three categories. So I think that we can look at the components and derive a fair value. And it's up to us to do that, and you can agree or disagree with me as you wish. I would appreciate any feedback.
Well, I concur with what you say. I would refine it a little bit by suggesting that the town has to assess both land and buildings, and it hasn't been done for 30-odd years. And I just looked at the materials that Mr. Cray submitted for all the changes in valuation of land, not buildings, in the two so-called neighborhoods, and did some back of the envelope kind of calculating on this, and I averaged the increase in the neighborhood 51 lots, and it's a rough number, but it appears that the assessor, there's an average increase of 2.89 times. So a $22,000 lot, which is Mr. Randall. His land was, again, valued at 61. So it's basically a threefold increase in land value in Area 51. I should keep calling it Neighborhood 51. And in Neighborhood 30, it was the same number. One had 12, the other had 13. And some were sort of outliers, but I just lumped them all together, add them all up, and divided by the number of pieces. And the real estate land values in Neighborhood 30 increased by 6.5 times. So there's quite a disparity in the increase in the value of the land. Part of that is based on the sort of sliding scale of square footage of frontage that was applied in Neighborhood 30. And the other part of it, which I thought we didn't really talk about when we first were talking about this, is that there is I can't remember, I always forget what it's called. There's sort of a baseline number that is applied to the land for developed, like for example, in Neighborhood 51, in evaluating the land, you slap on a $26,000 so-called developed baseline number. And if you look at all the, again, these are the documents that were submitted by Mr. Cray, there's most, I don't know the difference, I wish Mr. Robinson was here to explain this, but for example, the Fairwell property has a $26,000 add-on for a developed base lot. The next one, the name doesn't matter, is $28,000. I'm not sure why there's that variation. And there are some deductions made, but typically that's sort of the ballpark. And if there's no building on it, then it's like, or it's unbuildable, or there are some where it's a lower number. But then if you go to Neighborhood 30, all of a sudden you're talking about a $75,000 increase. So so there's sort of a doubling down here. These lots in Neighborhood 30, the land itself, is increased in value by this novel way, at least for the town, of calculating the value of frontage, which is this sort of 2,000 for the first foot in the sliding scale, whatever it's called. And then on top of that, you give them a $75,000 whack as opposed to the $26,000 one. So, which is sort of consistent with my back of the envelope calculations, which is basically that the land values in Area 30 are reassessed at three times what the land values were in, or maybe I should say double, because one was almost 3 and one was over 6 times. So I'm kind of at the point where I think this is arbitrary. And if we make a finding that the assessment was arbitrary as it relates to Mr. Cray, we don't have to look at the other ones, just his and his alone, then I think we move to the second phase of this, which is to determine what the value of the property should be. And that's where I take issue with Mr. Robinson's letter. He's telling us that, I guess he decides what's relevant and what's not, and he also tells us what we can and cannot do. But I think we as fact finders in determining value can look at regularly kept business records, public records that are highly reliable, and it's done all the time in court. We could also, if we wanted to, I think it's within our right to decide that we want to take a view, which is, again, happens in court all the time, where the fact finders go to the premises in question and just eyeball them. And a lot has been said so far that one of these neighborhoods looks a lot different, and the frontage looks a lot different than the other. And I think we as fact finders are entitled to, as happens in court all the time, take our own view of the premises. I'm not making a motion that we do that at this point, although I think it's something to consider. So I guess that's a long way of saying that I think Mr. Cray has made out a prima facie case that his assessment of land is arbitrary and capricious. or not, if not capricious, at least arbitrary. And as I read the case law that Mr. Robinson was able to submit to us, he points out a case that I quoted, says, Mr. Cray has the burden of proving that the assessment is manifestly wrong by demonstrating the property was substantially overvalued and an injustice resulted. And that to meet the initial burden of showing that the easement was manifestly wrong, he must demonstrate that the quote, the judgment of the assessor was irrational or unreasonable in light of the circumstances. And I think he's made that case out, based on what we know so far. And so I think we should look at the materials that the county administrator has assembled from the public records just to try to get more information pertaining to our decision on what the value of that property should be. I know Mr. Cray said, well, it should just be $300 a foot, and that's something we can consider. But I would think that if these sales show a 3 times, if the lots over neighborhood 51 typically were sold for, 3 times less, than the areas in 30, that would be an argument supporting Mr. Robinson, I suppose. But I just think if it turns out they're all kind of basically the same, then I think we could move pretty quickly to deciding that, that $300 a foot is a good way of doing it. And I understand, so I don't know whether we heard this. I wish Mr. Robinson or Mr. Craig was here, because I'm not sure whether there are other ponds in the town that, I think, I'm trying to remember where I heard this, that all of the ponds in the town are done at $300 a foot except for neighborhood 30, so.
Yeah, exactly. They all are all.
If we heard that, it seems to me makes it kind of easy for me to get to the $300 a foot unless these sales show that the land in area 30 is just 3 times greater in value than 51 or other, So I guess that's what I have to say. Sorry for taking so long.
So I have a concern, after reading through Mr. Robinson's letter, where he says, the nature of the request of your letter and email on April 4th is for additional factual information that the commission deems relevant. This continues a pattern of the commissioner's independent research. However, the commission is not an investigative body with independent authority to research and gather facts outside of facts presented to it by the parties. So that's of concern. I guess my question would be, is that factual? Because he does reference Maine Municipal and a few other Title 36 and things like that. So I would like to know, is that factual, that in according to Mr. Robinson's points, if they are accurate, then what we do come up with for resolution or however we continue with this, it sounds like, again, if what he's saying is true, the only thing we can base our judgment on is what was presented by Cray and Robinson. So I think that would be important. If all the decision-making that the two of you were talking about are within those parameters, then we're fine regardless. But if any of that is outside of that, I guess I would have to be comfortable to know that we can actually reach outside of what we've been presented and use that information to make our determination.
Well, I don't think we've done that so far. He's sort of claiming, I wish he were here to defend his position rather than just send a letter in, but he's not, so. And he's taking this pot shot at us, suggesting that we're sort of doing things that are beyond the.
I'm not saying that he's accurate or not, I would.
Well, I'm saying he's not.
I would, well,
I'm saying he's not.
I would actually like to hear that answer from somebody that's qualified to give that answer.
Yeah.
Right, so either a lawyer or Maine Municipal lawyers or somebody like that. Because the thing is if we do come up with a conclusion and it's beyond what our authority is, it's not gonna stand for one, right? I mean, we're gonna, not only the time that we've spent on this now, but the time in the future, and if that is the case, unwinding that and actually doing it correctly. I would rather do it correctly the first time.
I agree with that. I'm so struck by the fact that, and I did a little, as I said earlier, I did some research. We're trying to determine the value of land, not buildings, but the land. And as I read the appraisal manuals and so forth, the way you appraise land is by income, which is certainly not a factor here, or by replacement costs, which is not a factor here, or by market, which is always a factor. So the only way we can really appraise land is by looking at market data. And when we asked Mr. Robinson on behalf of the town to give us market data that reflects the value on both sides of the lake and gives us the whole picture, he said no. He said, I'm just giving you two. And that's all I think I have to do, so you can't do anything else. And I think, I don't think we have to accept that. I think we can, if we can go and look at ask for publicly maintained records that are reliable, and we can take, quote, judicial notice of them in making our determination. So I'm not as concerned as you about whether or not we're running astray.
Yeah, I'm concerned about whether the statement that he's making is accurate or not, because if we're stepping outside of our statutory authority, then whatever ends up being decided outside of that authority is null anyway. So I would just be comfortable to understand whether what he's telling us our job is accurate or not.
I really have no way of knowing that. In the process that is prescribed for this type of hearing and deliberation, it's noted that in the hearing, it's important that both sides present the information they think is important and relevant. There will not be another opportunity to do so. That's what it states in our processes. Deliberation simply says, at some time following the hearing, the commissioners will deliberate on and make a decision on the abatement request. This meeting is a public meeting, but not open to public input. So it really doesn't address what he's saying, that the scope of the commissioners is one thing or the other. I just want to clarify that the documents from Dean Cray that have all those valuation reports on them, that was submitted when he submitted his application. It is my mistake that I did not get that to you during the time of the hearing, but since that time, you've had a chance to look at it. I made an offer to do some independent research, which you have there, but at this point, if you're not comfortable entering that in as evidence, then just leave it be. Because I think from what you were able to gather from those valuation reports, and again, just take a look at those increases, I think you probably have the information you need to make a fair assessment of what the value should be, based on the fairness of the increases around the pond. I think, if you just allow me a couple comments here. The assigning of neighborhoods, while it may appear strange to us, it's common in the assessing world. So I don't think that your decision should in any way tell the town of Palmyra to change neighborhoods or change that approach. The same thing with the tiered approach. It's certainly a legitimate approach to using values. But if your concern is that Mr. Cray has made a point that this side of the lake went up, or the pond went up 3 times on land value, and my side went up 5 or 6 times on value, then if you want to try to make that equitable, then you can consider an abatement based on 3 times the value, i.e. that neighborhood 30 should be assessed at $1,000 a foot, whereas neighborhood 51 is assessed at $300 a foot. So that's one way of saying, okay, based on what we've seen, 5 times or 6 times is really too high. But now if you're going to say that's too high, then you have to land on a number that is fair and equitable. And that is what the tax bulletin says you're responsible of doing. If you think that he's been overassessed, then your next step is to determine what a fair abatement would be. How you do that without looking at other data, I don't know how you do that. So I just want to remind you, because I listened to the meeting. These are some of the questions after both parties had made their cases that came from the commissioners. Why are there 2 neighborhoods on the same body of water? The answer was the properties are markedly different, with larger shore frontage in neighborhood 51 and smaller non-conforming lots in neighborhood 30. Why is there a tiered approach to shorefront value? This approach, common in Maine, allows for an assessor to use the principle of diminishing returns to value smaller lots, which historically bring a higher sales price. Who determines the tiered values? The assessor does. In this case, the values are based at 2,000, 1,700, 1,400, and 1,100 every 25 feet. What was the basis for setting those values in neighborhood 30? A sales analysis going back 3 years that found 2 sales, both in 2022 with an average sales price of $275. And finally, were there other sales going back further than 3 years that could have been used to determine whether values should be 5 times higher in neighborhood 30 than neighborhood 51? And the answer was no other sales data was considered, as it was deemed to be irrelevant. So that was the conversation and the evidence that you drew out from that first meeting a month ago.
Can I just, I'll add, I'm looking at the statute, which is Title 30 something, Section 844. The only thing it says about how we do this, it says that we have a right of appeal, then it says, if the commissioners think the applicant is overassessed, the applicant is granted such reasonable abatement as the commissioners think proper. Period. That's all it says about how this hearing takes place. So,
That's what you had said to me when I questioned our jurisdiction, this whole thing, is what we should be able to do, so. I'm going back to, I mean, there's no way we can do this on 2 sales or whatever. I'm not saying we're gonna do back 20 years. I'd like to see, because this is a span of 3 years, and Commissioner Steckers has been bringing it up through the COVID thing, where the housing market was nuts. So, for me, I just think we need to look at the record like you're saying, but I think we need a little bit more in terms of sale value to make a determination.
well, would it be appropriate this time for me to make a motion that we reopen the evidence to accept the materials that the county administrators obtained from the Maine Bureau of Taxation for sales around White's Pond for the past 15 years? That's a motion.
I don't see why we can't make it, even though we are in a workshop, we are still a deliberative body.
Well, not only that, I think
And we
Mr.
can-
Gray and Mr. Robinson had every right to be here, and they just didn't show up, so, you know, they kind of waived any right to complain.
What we could do is bring that down to new agenda items and put that on as a resolution, is that what we would do?
I think that would be a little out of order.
Would that be out of order?
Very much out of order, yeah. I think
But this is our deliberation, and if we, in deliberating, decide that we need to accept other evidence, then I think we do it now. So that's why.
Well, I don't know that we need a motion, but we could do it by consensus.
Yeah.
So the question would be, I know it seems like, at least with you, John, is more evidence going to change where you're at?
Well, I would affirm where I'm at. I think, because I think if we found out that the properties in 51 typically sold for a third of what the properties in 30 sold for, we would have a basis for saying, well, then the land value should be 3 times one, or one vis-a-vis the other, so. And if they're all the same, then I think we could say, well, why don't we just call it all even? I mean, I would just give us, or maybe not 3 times, and maybe 2 times, or whatever. So I just think it's more information. I think it's relevant, despite what Mr. Robinson feels. It's very relevant, because that's the only way of assessing the value. The only way. And I don't understand why he didn't go back further. I think that's a failure on his part, so. But anyway, I think it'd be helpful, and I think we can take notice of that information. It's reliable, publicly gathered information, and it should have been presented by Mr. Robinson, and he chose not to do so. And we're not bound by his decision.
And it's only tiered in that one area. The shoreline is only tiered in that one area. No other pond has a tiered shorefront, and
No other
not
place
all,
on that pond?
no other pond in the town of Palmyra,
No
and no
pond,
other, and no
period,
other
yeah.
place on that pond itself, except for that one neighborhood, and within Robinson's own letter, he describes neighborhoods as being interchangeable with comparable and similarly situated. So I think that both neighborhoods are comparable and similarly situated.
Well, and I agree with you, particularly with respect to individual lots. Like I actually, again, looking at evidence in the record, which is Mr. Cray's submission, I actually charted all of the various lots, and there are a lot of small lots across the pond from Mr. Cray that look equally, quote, grandfathered, or what's the rubric for that? I forget.
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming. There seem to be plenty of non-conforming lots in Area 51, and so not all of them, but some of them, so anyway.
So I guess that would leave it to us to determine a shoreline footage, whether we tiered it or not.
Well, yeah, and I think we have a very narrow focus, which is what I read in the statutes. The only thing we're supposed to decide, if we have decided the appraisal is inadequate and arbitrary, et cetera, then we just decide what Mr. Cray's land should be worth. We don't worry about anything else.
Right.
And the town takes that with whatever grain of salt they want and deal with it in any way they choose. That's not what we're called upon to do. So, but we could, I agree, we could say, based on the information we have, we think that these lots should be valued at $600 a foot, or $1,000 a foot, or anything, whatever the information we have suggests as a reasonable outcome.
So I've always been in favor of more information to make a decision. So I guess as long as we're comfortable that, further investigation is within our purview, I'm fine with that. And it would make sense that it looks like you could take past evaluations, let's say it was, 2 or 3 year span, 10 years ago, where there was a sale or two on that shore, as compared to a sale or two, or an evaluation, of course, there has been an evaluation in 30 years, but a sale or two on this shore, was this one 3 times more than this one, or not? And if it was closer to 2 times, or 1.5 times, or whatever it was, then
Well, Exhibit F does provide us with sales,
And that's the information that I put together that has not been accepted as,
well, if we are,
if
if we're going to accept this, then we also should accept Mr. Robinson's letter, because that came in afterward.
Well, I'm assuming that you were going to accept his letter as the response. But this was not compiled by anybody outside of me.
Okay.
So I just want that to be understood.
Well, I think Mr. Garnett has a right to write a letter to us, but it's not evidence of anything. It's just his argument. He's to support his earlier claim that he was making over and over again the other day. So, I mean, that's just part of the record, it's his letter. But the materials that you have sent, this would be considered as evidence upon which we rely in making our decision.
Right.
So, they're two different things.
And that being said, would you allow me just to give you a quick rundown of what this is? In what we call Exhibit F here?
Sure, yeah.
So this,
Yeah.
if that's okay? Would you?
Well, in court, they say, we'll accept the evidence de bene and rule on the admissibility of it later on, so, yeah. Before we do that.
Fair enough. Then I'll just state that I am not an assessor. However, I have 10 years of municipal experience working with assessors, and I was the tax collector in Madison for 8 years. So I know where to find information. This data, I found 8 sales dating back to 2006 in neighborhood 30, and 5 sales dating back to 2009 in neighborhood 51. And I found these on the State of Maine Real Estate Transfer Tax Declaration, which really just gives you numbers. Also, since the focus of the discussion has been on shorefront footage, that's basically what I calculated all the way over in the last column, is based on the sale price divided by the number of shorefront footage, it gave you an average sales price per foot. Again, this is not assessing 101, this is just a layman's view of this. So at the top of the sheet are the 2 properties that sold that were included in the revaluation work done. Then there's 6 more that were sold in a 18-year time frame. So once you combine all of them for all 8, the average sale price per foot was almost $1,500 in area neighborhood 30. Then if you can compare those sales down there from neighborhood 51, the cost per square for a foot of shoreland goes down primarily because some of these are very large lots with 300 or 400 feet of shore frontage. But that gives you a number of 650, 655. So in looking at this, it takes you in the same direction that those valuation reports take you, that the value is 2 to 3 times higher in neighborhood 30 than it is neighborhood 51. So you could agree with the assessor that the value should be higher in neighborhood 30. What your decision should be based on is how much higher should they be. I don't think you can look at any of these numbers and say everybody should be $300 a foot all the way around the pond. I don't think that would stand up, because the evidence indicates that those non-conforming lots are more valuable. To Commissioner Alsop's point about the difference in base lots, 26, 28,000, 74,000, I think that is part of the judgment that that's a non-conforming lot, therefore it's valued higher. I would focus only on the the shoreland footage, and if you were to make a determination that $300 a foot is okay for that neighborhood, but neighborhood 30 should be 3 times higher, then I think it leads you to trying to make an assessment of the value based on $1,000 a square foot rather than $1,550 a square or a shoreland foot for Mr. Cray's property. And in the calculations on the second page, if you were either to use a straight $1,000 per foot, or you were to make a proposed change tier, really that's probably not your purview. You're trying to get basically to an abatement figure. That would result in an abatement somewhere $50,000 to $55,000 for Mr. Cray's property, which is really what you're trying to get to, is what should the value of that land be? So,
Can I ask a question, just a clarification? So, this is, we're not, I mean, if one of the buildings on one of these sales was much nicer than, or better, bigger,
I didn't do that much work.
so this is a very rough,
It's
Very rough.
it's why I called it a layman's or a straight face, because you really, I mean, Mr. Robinson's right, you really don't have a whole lot of data to go from.
but could we could say, based on this information, that sales in neighborhood 51 are 1.5 times the value of sales in, no, I'm kind of backwards. 30 is average of 141,000, it's 1.5 times the value of 51. But
I wouldn't look at sale price, I'd focus only on square footage, or shoreland
yeah, okay.
frontage, because that's the meat of the question, is why are you valuing that shore frontage at such a disparate?
What I'm suggesting is that if you had a really beautiful, expensive, modern house on a very small lot, you would have, that would look like that. The big number, the total number would suggest that the shoreline is worth a lot more than the next lot next door, which has kind of a small unfinished camp on it.
Right. But as you now understand, the way they did the assessment was they applied the same rule to every lot in neighborhood 30, regardless of a really nice house or a old camp.
Okay, well,
And I'm sorry, that gets to Commissioner Cezak's point, where this body is going to try to just focus in on one component of the assessing process that determines the value of that shore frontage.
well, do you find that the information that you built this table on was reliable information that you obtained from the state?
Right, it's available, and in the back there is the printouts of everything from the,
And is this the Bureau of Taxation? Or?
it's Maine Revenue,
Maine
and
Revenue.
this is the real estate transfer tax declaration page. So anytime there's a transaction, a transfer tax is paid, and so that's recorded. And that's available for anyone in the public to view.
Well, I would ask that we accept Exhibit F as evidence in this case, as a regularly kept business record from the state, and highly reliable, impartial, factual evidence.
If that's the consensus, I'm fine.
So move.
Okay, we're good.
So may I ask, because you'll have a place to do a motion later, but while you're in your deliberation, you're kind of putting together your finding of facts, and then you're gonna hopefully move to setting a value. Can I record that you have come to a consensus that the assessment as done for Dean Cray's property was manifestly wrong?
I would say yes.
I think we have consensus on that. I think we find the assessors arbitrary and based on insufficient facts.
So just as a reminder, and I'm looking for it and I can't find it. So one of the things is with this information that you just provided, Tim, looks like a 2.3 times greater value per footage with this calculation.
Right.
Is basically what you're.
Right.
So Cray's argument was the assessment of his property per square foot was how many times greater?
5 times.
5 times, gotcha.
Because he was basing on.
That was 5 times greater, so
When you,
with this calculation, it's basically
Right.
twice as much as what it should be.
right, when you figure in the tiered approach, and his property has just 100 feet of shore, it's $1,550 a foot on average.
Right.
Compared to his neighbor across the pond that's getting charged $300 a foot, so that's the 5 times difference.
But Tim, if let us say, if we said we have a consensus that his property should be appraised at $900 a foot, 3 times the other side of the lake. And what do we do with the developed base lot factor? That just stays the same, right?
If you want my opinion,
Yes.
leave it alone. and leave the neighborhoods alone. Focus just on the dollars per foot of shore.
But that's a nice analogy, because that's consistent with the sort of, if we went to 900, it's 3 times the 300. And the developed baseline differential is
It's
very
3
close
times.
to that.
Yeah,
So,
consistent.
3 times seems to be,
And 3 times is actually higher on average than what it's been in the past, at 2.3 times greater.
yeah.
So if I could, the finding of facts were that the assessor's valuation was manifestly wrong because you deemed it to be arbitrary, it had insufficient facts. Do you want to include that, to the best of your knowledge, the evidence presented, it's the only neighborhood in all of Palmyra that's assessed that way?
Did we hear that from a witness? That's the only question I'm asking.
We did, I believe we heard that from
I'm
Dean.
fairly sure Dean Cray said that.
Okay, good enough then.
Anything else that has gone into determining that this assessment is manifestly wrong?
Well, it's resulted in an unsupportable difference between, it's a form of discrimination issue. There's no basis for the difference I'm trying to,
Okay.
you probably put that in good words. That's why it's arbitrary.
Because the whole shorefront hasn't been equitable. There's not equity between the foot per foot, on that particular pond. Notwithstanding the other ponds, but
Or you could say, there's no rational basis for the differentiation that he makes. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay, thank you. So if you want to make a determination on value based on $1 per square foot, you could simply do that, and then I can go back and calculate what the abatement should be, unless you want to make a
Well,
official abatement.
I would support $900 a foot, call it good. That's 3 times the $300 a foot.
and that actually is in line with how the property, the baseline properties were established, because they went from essentially 26 or 28 to 75.
Yeah.
So that's again 3 times.
Yeah.
So that's in reasonable calculations of the shore frontage and the rest of the property. It keeps them in line, it makes it equitable.
Okay. I think you've done what you're required to do. Later on in the agenda, you have
Okay
a,
with that?
you have a motion.
So,
I think it's too high. 3 times.
in this case, you've got, what, 100 feet?
He's 100 feet.
So,
It'll result in about a $55,000 to $60,000 abatement, so.
okay. Okey-dokey. So, we're all set with Dean in the town of Palmyra. With that, we will move on to our next workshop, which is review of procurement policy.
Before we leave that entirely, I'd like to work with Tim on what he's working on, if I can help him in any way. There's a consensus from the board that that's okay? I don't want to get out in front of him.
I think where we're at is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I do too.
I do want to put together a summary, similar to the summary that was done in the Brand case that you signed. So I would like I'd love to have Commissioner Alsop's help on that, so.
Well, we can table that agenda item to the next meeting to give time to
So you
work that through.
Put the summary together.
Yeah, so then we can take a formal action on.
Then we can take the formal action on it at the next
Excellent.
Right.
meeting. But when we get down there, somebody will have to do a motion to table to the next. Okay, now, review of the procurement policy.
So it's certainly in your purview to discuss this. The sheriff had every intention of being here. He is at a marijuana bust in Ripley, so he is not going to be available for the meeting today. And Deputy Mike Mitchell, Chief Deputy, is on vacation. So,
Was the Ripley after Harmony?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
What was Harmony?
He reported
At 10 was Harmony.
3,300 plants and,
Did they ever find any guns or money, or is it just plants?
oh no, he finds paraphernalia and cash.
Guns?
No guns that was reported, but
But there's cash, because I don't see much cash in the newspaper articles.
there's no $1,700 cash. It was in the newspaper article.
Oh, the pot. Have an incinerator up there? There's a lot of pot that.
No. I don't think that's the,
New York be sold.
I don't think that's the purview of this workshop, but,
Okay.
Sure it is.
Even though you are a commissioner, you can do whatever you want.
Legal law.
in essence, this stems from a recent bid that was awarded for a patrol vehicle to a car dealer outside of Somerset County because their bid was $2,300 lower than a local dealer. So the sheriff just wanted to see if the board would be willing to consider proposed language, if you have this in your workshop or in your workbooks. The sheriff's language adds on to the current language that says the commissioners are cognitive of the importance of promoting a healthy economic business climate in Somerset County. In evaluating submitted bids, commissioners will welcome a preference, or will consider a preference to a business within the county's geographical boundaries when delivering and awarding a bid. And then it goes on to state the same things that describe the bid most advantageous to the county. So I leave it up to you for any thoughts, and if you want to wait till the sheriff's back, we can do this at another time, but it's not necessarily urgent.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
If you do think of doing something like that, instead of being arbitrary, can you say if a bid comes in from a Somerset County company compared to an outside company and it's 10% lower, you consider it? You know, you can make it more structured than arbitrary.
We've done that one.
Yeah, I'd rather not lock it in that way because there are multiple factors, and actually the sheriff lines it up in here as well with, how quickly it can be delivered and, some of those other things that you take into account, as opposed to a hard and fast number. I get the accountant guy in here.
Well, it's legally better to support also.
But what are you suggesting, Pat? Are you saying that the 10%, what was that all?
Let's say the vehicle from outside was at 50,000. The vehicle from inside is at 53,000. But you have a 10% factor for the.
So he'd be within 10%.
If he was up,
Right.
he could go up to, close to 55,000 and still be considered. He'd fall in that, so you could take the overage for the Somerset County vehicle.
I have a very small thing, Tim, on this. I think it should say the commissioners recognize the importance rather than say are cognitive of.
We're just trying to keep up with you, man,
Okay.
with the words that we use.
But beyond that, I think this is a very treacherous and slippery slope that we're on, and I think we have to proceed with great caution, because I don't want to get a letter from some highly reputable Kennebec County auto dealer or other vendor of any sort saying, I got screwed by Somerset County because they've got a sweetheart deal with some local guy and it ain't fair and I don't like it and I got something to say about it. I don't want to be there. I think this is very, very, we've sort of proceeded in a very reasonable way, I think. We say, we can always take into account quality, promptness, other service issues. We can always do that, and price. If it's a couple of $100, we can look the other way. But I think, and it's hard to pick the right number.
Right.
You know, if it's $1,000, is it $5,000? Well, wait a minute, you know, and I don't know what that number is. And every case is different, but I don't think we should be, and I also think that this particular subject that we're dealing with now relates to one particular vendor of one particular item, and it's probably a bad, and in a circumstance which may change just with the process of time, because that vendor's sort of, that they may change their business model in some way. I don't know. So I think we have to be very, very careful about how we do this. And I think, but again, I think we already do it in a reasonable way.
Right.
But I don't think we should have a reputation of being kind of a closed shop here, so that,
Right.
you know, people in Bangor that are perfectly reputable dealers that will stand by their stuff are getting shut out of the business. This is not how public money is supposed to be spent. So I think we ought to proceed with caution.
Yeah,
Honestly, reading this multiple times, though, I don't see where the meaning in the end is much different one way or the other. It's just a nicer way of saying it, and it's exactly what we're already doing.
Right.
And it doesn't lock us in, so it's more of a, you know, it's more of a nicety to let people know out there more than anything. Yeah, other than cognitive, I don't have a problem with it.
I am concerned a little bit with distance of service availability. If you're referring to a vehicle, it's under warranty, so a local dealership can service it just as readily as the dealership that it came from. Those are all recognized.
So like 2 years and stuff.
Right.
dealerships within a company.
Well, you know, and I think one of the things in here, it mentions, mentions distance of the service a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the distance of service
Right.
availability, yeah.
In my mind, and it has been brought up here over the last year, is actually the history of service, the quality of service, which.
But that's already covered.
Right, when we decide on each individual case, that's something that
Yeah,
I would take into account.
oh, yeah.
Is, hey, if we're being treated well, let's continue to be treated well as long as it's not a substantial difference in price.
But I think the current language covers everything. I mean, I don't see, I don't really think there's a reason to change it. That would be my view.
Well, I can report back to the sheriff and, let him know that you folks discussed it, so.
And if he wants to come in and make a pitch for something different.
I think that was his intention today, but he got tired with, overcome by events.
So, then when we send out our bids, this language is in that bid.
I believe it is, the particulars of the advantageous to the county, yes. Yeah.
So everybody knows that there's a slight bias to the county anyway, because it's advantageous to the county.
True.
You're thinking, sometimes we forget to think that because the dealership that we deal with here has 3 different dealerships, that's the 3 bids, and that's okay, and I don't think that's okay either. So,
Yeah, I think the sheriff understands that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on to charter review.
I'll be brief on this, but the reason I kept it on the agenda is because this one's kind of important to me. This is Section 6 of the charter in regards to recalling elected officials. I just want to bring a couple of things to your attention. Somerset County's language is unique. No other county has this language in it. Of the five counties that have charters, only one other charter has any provision for recall, and that's Androscoggin, and that applies only to commissioners. The way this is written in the charter, this applies to all elected officials in Somerset County, and you do not have to give a reason or state a reason for the recall. The reason that this is near and dear to me is because Madison has very similar language in their ordinance, and just a year ago, they went through a whole process of recalling a sitting elected official. The town of Pittston just went through a very public process where they attempted to recall a sitting selectman. That recall failed, but in the process, at town meeting, Pittston changed their recall ordinance. If you do not have a recall ordinance or a charter that mentions a recall, then you fall back on the state statute. State statute only allows for a recall if the elected official has been convicted of a crime and the municipality they serve in is the victim of that crime. That's the only way you can recall an elected official unless you have language tougher than that, which Somerset County does. In our current political climate, one of the things that MMA has kind of encouraged municipalities to consider is to revamping or upgrading their recall ordinances because it discourages people from running for public office. So,
In the climate that we have based on the last election as well with our registry of deeds, if we try to change the charter, is this going to bring out, is this dead on arrival if we decided to eliminate this? Or?
I talked with Elaine Allos, and she doesn't recall much discussion about this. She says she doesn't recall at all. She says it was important to somebody, and that's why that language got in there. But I'm not suggesting to you that you try to do a charter amendment at this moment. I'm just making you aware of the language that's in there regarding recalls and how unique it is. I know we're a special place, but how unique it is to Somerset County.
Well, that's the other thing.
Oh, sorry.
That's the other thing, is that if we make a charter amendment, it has to go to the county.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
And I agree with you, this does need to have it be amended in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
Joel?
So, in your research on this, is there, the vast majority of the counties, are they similar or the same in their language? Is there a large similarity between 6 or 8 or 10 different counties as compared to ours?
As far as the recall language?
Right.
So 5 counties have charters. So for the 11 counties that don't have charters, they automatically default to state statute.
Okay.
So of the 5 that do have charters, only 2 mention recalls. The other 3 don't mention it all, which means they default to state.
Okay.
So
So the vast majority
Androscoggin and
is state
Skowhegan.
statute.
Androscoggin and Somerset are the 2 that have recall language, and Androscoggin's only for commissioners, and you have to have cause. So we're a free-for-all with no cause.
And how many votes, I'm trying to figure this, paragraph G says, in the case of the commissioner, the petitioner shall be signed by the registered voters of the district which that commissioner represents. So not the whole county, but just your district.
Let's just say how many people voted in Skowhegan and Cornville in the last gubernatorial election.
Well, they all voted for me, so that's easy.
10%. 10% of that number.
Like Scott, we were kind of tied that way.
10% of that number.
So they need 300 people that would have to sign a petition to get rid of me. Right. I'm sure they're lining up right now as we speak, but,
Especially those in Cornville.
And I started the petition.
but I've always felt that, I mean, you see a lot of recall elections across the country from both sides of the political spectrum, and they're always, it's not a pretty picture. So, and sometimes the results aren't so good. I think the regular election day is a very effective way of recalling something,
Certainly.
you know, so that would be.
Look at you, an originalist.
But I would think it'd be hard to change this based on that, you know.
Right.
Take it away our sacred right of recall.
I'm just making you aware of it.
Okay.
And how unique we are.
So, where the vast majority are based on state statute, there doesn't seem to be, it's not the wild, wild west out there as far as this stuff going. I mean, it doesn't seem like having that process based on state statute is a problem for
Right.
the vast majority of the state.
Right.
Yeah, other than the effort that you're talking about, you know, I think joining the rest of the sanity of the other counties might be, but is it worth the effort?
We'll see. We're almost done the charter review, then I'll give you some bullet points. So.
I'll set with charter review. Moving on to policy review, paid family leave, medical leave.
Okay. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the state's new law that is already in place regarding paid family medical leave. And I've polled my colleagues within county government, and I've even polled some large employers here locally, and we're out in front because no one has really pulled together policies in writing yet. The reason we find ourselves out in front is this has become an issue with the collective bargaining agreement with the corrections officers. So, paid family medical leave, there's two principles that need clarification, and they're related. One is it going to be the county's policy that the employee will pay half of the premium and the employer will pay half of the premium? This is not a benefit that the county offers. Paid family medical leave is not a county benefit. It is a state program mandated that every employer participate in. Employers with more than 15 employees have the option to have the employer pay half and the employee pay half. It's a payroll deduction.
That's the smallest amount the employer can contribute. I mean, you can't go lower than that, you can't.
That's right, the employer can't go under half.
Okay.
They have to do half or above, up to all. So that's the first policy question, is that going to be the policy of the county? And we kind of need to know that to close out our union negotiations. The other side of that is, most everyone, in municipal government anyways, has policies that say, if you go out on family medical leave, you need to use your paid time off. You need to use your vacation and your sick time. So that you can't go out on family medical leave and hold on to your time, and then when your family medical leave 12 weeks is up, you say, oh, by the way, I'm going to take a vacation now and use these days. Now that it's paid, a paid benefit that the employee may be paying into, one, I don't think the state's going to allow employers to do that. I don't think they're going to allow employers to say, got to use all your vacation, got to use all your sick time. Because it's a insurance policy that the employee is paying into.
And he has to. I mean, if we say you gotta pay half, he says, if he just says, I don't want family, can he waive it and just not pay anything?
That is correct. That they don't have to take paid family medical
Okay,
leave.
so if we, as a county, said we'll pay half, and the employee said, I don't want to pay half, you should pay everything, and we say, sorry, if you want to pay half, you don't get it, and that's okay. We can just have an uncovered employee.
No, you can't do that. It has to be all or nothing.
So if your employee says, I don't want to pay half, that means we have to pay everything. Is that what you're saying?
No, it means the employee will pay half. I mean, there's
There's an automatic deduction from the
Right.
check, and, okay.
Right.
No opt-out,
Right.
okay.
I think, aren't you talking about having to go out on paid family leave? You're talking about paying for
Yeah.
paid family leave.
That's right. These two things are related. When I talked to a large employer that has over 500 employees, one of the things they were considering was amending their policy so it shows that if you have an inordinately high number of sick hours, you have to use those down to a certain level. But your vacation, you're going to have to choose to do what you want to do with your vacation. So rather than the employer saying, you're going to pay half and you've got to exhaust all your vacation sick time, should the employer say, you pay half, you use any excess sick time you have over, pick a number, 120 hours, and you're free to do whatever you want with your vacation. So that's what I'm kind of floating out here. And we do, in order to close out our corrections contract, we kind of need to know where we're gonna land
Is
on
it,
this.
is it limited? I mean, how many weeks of?
12 weeks. 12 weeks of paid. There are stipulations that could extend that another 4 weeks.
And right now, we have unpaid family medical leave.
That's correct.
Is it 12 weeks?
It is. So the benefit of family leave doesn't change. The only thing that changes in the state law is you're paid for it, and they really loosened up who you can take time off to take care of.
And, just lost my train of thought. Right now, in Somerset County, you use up your sick time before you get your family medical leave.
In policy, yes. Well, when you go out on family medical leave, you are required to use your sick and vacation and comp time. Whatever you have on the books, you're required to use if you're going out on family medical leave.
Okay, so if I'm sick, I'm just ignorant of this, you gotta help me out. And I have 2 weeks vacation coming to me and 1 week's worth of sick time, and I have 12 weeks of family medical leave. Does that mean I'm out for 15 weeks?
Nope. Nope, that means while you're on the 12, if you choose, you're really sick and you choose to go on family medical leave,
Yeah.
you get up to 12 weeks. You don't have to take the 12 weeks. If the doctor says you're better and you return.
No, let's say I'm sick as a dog, I'm not gonna get better for 24 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, according to current policy, you would have to use your sick and vacation and whatever comp time you have on the books as you go out the door on family medical leave.
So that's
And
part of the
if-
12 weeks?
Yep, and
Okay.
if that only lasts you 6 weeks, then the rest of that 6 weeks is unpaid. Until now. Because now you can apply for paid family medical leave through the Department of Labor and be reimbursed up to 80% of your wages, capped at $1,000 a week, while you're on paid family medical leave.
I thought we're paying it.
No, we do not pay it. We do not
It's an
pay the
insurance
paid
policy.
family. It's an insurance policy. The Department of Labor pays the individual. It's not a county benefit.
The 1% that we pay in covers.
Like our percentage of FICA or workers' comp
Right.
or those sorts of
But
things.
it's not 1%, it's 50% of the premium, of the,
And the premium is 1% of an employee's wages.
oh,
So you pay, the employer pays half of that 1%, and the employee pays half of that 1% until this all falls apart in 2027, because there's a caveat in there that the state says, we can revisit this 1% in 2028.
so let's just break this down. So if you had an employee that was getting $1,200 bi-weekly, 1% of that would be $12, and we pay $6 if we pay 50%.
Okay.
So that 1,200, am I doing this right, Pat? You could-
In the budget, based on the budget information, we will be paying roughly $60,000 a year, and the employees will be paying $60,000 a year.
That's the total amount for all the employees? And if we pay for everything, we pay $120,000.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I think I figured it out.
So how does this insured family leave dovetail with the federal?
It's the same. In other words, it's, the only thing that's different is Maine will pay you.
And in that law that you said that it does not allow an employer to compel an employee to exhaust rights to any sick, vacation, or personal time.
Correct. That is,
So that means if I want to go out and take family leave, you can't make me use up my time first.
right. No lawyer will give a straight answer on this, because this language that you're referring to is right out of Title 26. It's right out of the law. They have not made their rules yet. So there's a commission that's supposed to be making rules on this stuff.
Right.
CFO.
In that, there's clause there, if I'm remembering correctly, that if that is already in place as a policy, that we can keep that in place and they would use their sick time in there.
That is not in the law.
It's not in the law.
No, there's
Not
not.
in the law.
The only thing that's in the law says, this law does not allow an employer to compel an employee to exhaust all their rights. The legal opinion is, If you currently have a policy that says that, you may be able to keep it, but they have not made a definitive answer on that yet. So this is this is why most employers and county governments are waiting till they do the clarification of the rules.
Gentlemen,
So we're not signing anything to that.
No, so
But you want guidance.
I need some guidance on this, where you're headed.
Can I ask you a question? I know you've sort of shopped around private and public sectors on this. And is there any kind of consensus on what employers are doing?
The consensus on the half and half is pretty much across the board. Everybody wants to do a half and half.
Yeah.
Will everybody have to change their policies that require exhausting all your time off? That's what I can't get a straight answer on, because no lawyer has dared to touch that yet.
I guess what my suggestion would be is we agree to half and half, and we agree to keep that you have to use sick time, vacation time, until such time as we are told we can't. I guess.
I concur completely, Commissioner Stevens. I think it's a good idea.
All right?
And do we have to put a drawdown number on that? You had mentioned 120 hours.
I had seen that in another, not a municipality, but a large company's policy. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. So.
What do you mean by that? I'm not following.
So, if the employee is paying into it, then it may not be right to essentially force that employee to use all their vacation time. So you take vacation time off the table, they can still do what they want with their vacation time. But if an employee has 600 sick hours, because county policy does not limit the accumulation of sick time. We don't pay it out, because that was grandfathered, but you have people on the books with 1,000 hours of sick time. And so if a person goes out on family medical leave and they have 1,000 hours of sick time, it probably makes common sense that they should pay out some of that sick time while they're on paid family medical leave. And if they're allowed to do that, then they receive the benefit of getting a little extra money during the time that they're out sick, but they don't have to exhaust all their sick time. And I just picked an arbitrary number like 120 hours, leave that on the books. So that approach may be something this board has to consider if in the rulemaking process we find out that, you're restricted from telling somebody they have to use all their time. So.
One of the things that states in here, that once we get more history underneath our belt, we can have private plans. So if we feel that we can save money by doing a private plan, we can put our own plan in place, as long as we meet the minimum requirements of payments. But until we get history built on how our employees actually use this.
And the maximum weekly benefit for this is, you mentioned this?
80%, was it?
It's 80% of pay up to $1,033. So,
Gross pay?
I don't know. I'm tired.
My great uncle died in Florida in
Don't
January,
be so cynical.
and I can get $1,000 a week to go down to the funeral for 12 weeks.
Well, that's bereavement leave.
Now, if he was in the military, you get 27. I'm wishing we get 26 weeks of military.
And 3 months?
I don't want to get in the weeds, I just need the guidance.
My recollection is 100% of the elected officials in Augusta from Somerset County voted no on this mandate.
My only concern about the pace of this meeting is the esteemed road commissioner from Blackwell Hill should be raking his yard, but he's had to sit through all these workshops.
That would be even worse.
I think we're ready to move on.
Should have mentioned that, Dave.
Are you good with 50%?
I agree with the 50%. I am very concerned about the accrual not being able to be used, or being able to be used, and perhaps there's a double dipping there. I think somebody's going to jump up and down about that, too. But that's somebody else's rulemaking. I suppose what we will need to do is in the future, look at how we provide sick leave. That's my thought.
Well, if you're doing that, you probably ought to revisit vacation time as well.
Well, you really didn't want to go into the weeds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were warned about that.
Okay, so we are moving right along to open bids for the textile fabric for the unorganized territory. We have 3 bids. No other bids come in the meantime. And this one is fabric bid. The County of Somerset is seeking bids on approximately 60 rolls of polypropylene woven fabric, a geotextile fabric. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just the specs on the fabric. The company name for this bid is Contractor's Choice LLC, 7 Cooper's Mills Road, Windsor, Maine. And their bid is $1.06 per square yard for a total of $31,800. And Paris Farm Union, let's see, get this. I'm going to use this new tool here. I know, I went to myself, against the law. Fabric bid. Paris Farm Union, 1435 Main Street, Oxford, Maine. Price per square yard is 83 cents. Actually, they have 0.83 cents, so it's even less.
That must be, yeah, that's not
For a total of $24,900. So we know it's 83 cents. And then we've got this. This fabric bid is from J-Bar Construction Products, 1270 Hammond Street, Suite 2, Bangor, Maine. And the bid per square yard is 85 cents for a total of $25,500.
So later on in your agenda, you'll have a resolution regarding this, but just to clarify, Paris Farmers Union was 24.9 and J-Mar was 25.5?
25.5, yes. And so you have, well, actually, no, you have, let's see, Constructor's Choice was
31.8.
31.8.
And I assume it's all the same material, I mean,
That's what we're gonna check on. Pull out, step out of the room, and then come back with our recommendation.
I say we appoint a committee.
Yeah, it was.
24.9 and 25.5. So there's those. You do the envelopes? Why don't you bring the envelopes up to Tim?
Okay, thank you much.
All right. Oh, here's another envelope. Sorry, David.
Not the same thing maybe before this morning, but.
Yeah, well, get some exercise. You're gonna get your steps in today.
That's good, I can use exercise.
All right. So the bids have been opened There's no public hearing, public comment to allow members of the public to comment or reserve time to speak on an upcoming agenda item. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak or reserve time? Seeing none. New agenda items, commissioners only. Seeing none. Finance reporting.
As you can see, the head count stayed stable, which is a good sign. When it comes to the forecast, we're still looking to be a little over $1 million favorable with the general fund, and a little over $2 million favorable when it comes to the jail. No big changes. So we're still
Holding course. Very good, thank you. Any questions, concerns?
Remember, April 29th is the next meeting for the budget.
Thank you. Good. Administrator report.
I just want to touch on a couple of things that are in the capital part of the agenda, just to give you a little more information. Maintenance, Nelson Palmer and Julie over at the Extension Office have been vetting materials and contractors to remove the carpet and replace it with vinyl flooring. That total project should come in under $18,000. There's about $20,000 in existing capital. That's one of the items that you'll be voting on in a later resolution.
And the president of the Extension Committee, they thanked us. She thanked us for getting rid of that old carpet and the improvement.
We're trying to be sensitive.
Very, very happy.
Yeah, we're trying to be sensitive to a lot of odor issues over there, and that carpet was a big...
I was just up there last night at a meeting, and I noticed an odor. Is it from the carpet?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll find out in a couple of weeks. Other than what's on your my report for activities, I did also meet with Patrick, Mike from Emergency Management, Tammy from Communications, Pavel and Jonathan from IT to discuss the redundancy plan. You'll see that in the capital as well. This is what we always used to refer to as the dark fiber plan, and we've looked at other options, and I have information that Jonathan gave me that I don't understand, so I'll give it to you. So you'll know what the satellite option is with Starlink, not to be confused with Skynet that built the Terminator.
This is Elon Musk.
Yeah. So again, you'll have a resolution coming up on this, but they're recommending $30,000 to do the setup in the 3 buildings for this satellite redundancy option, which essentially uses satellite phone technology. It's better than cell phone technology. After it's installed, it'll have a cost of about $9,000 a year. That's opposed to a Consolidated's offer of about $60,000 a year. So it's a considerably lower way of ensuring that you still have connectivity between buildings in the case of an emergency. So,
They must test these on a regular basis to make sure it works. Once it's installed, I assume, kind of like your propane generators.
and I assume that's what your service contract is at $750 a month and going forward.
I know discussing this with Paul Bell, they talked about maybe doing it once a quarter, or at least once a year, testing to make sure it works.
The only other thing I'll mention is speaking with Tammy over at the communications office. There is this week is the Safety Dispatcher Telecommunications Recognition Week, so there is a resolution and a proclamation for you to sign later on. And speaking of recognition, Chairman Cezak sent this over to me, that there's a opening for submitting for Distinguished Service in Community Policing to the U.S. Department of Justice. And so that's something that I may be meeting with the sheriff about and seeing if there's potential applicants that could be considered.
Meet with the sheriff and the DA.
Yep. And that's all I had.
Is that just county law enforcement? I mean, that's our purview.
That's our purview. That's what we're going to focus on.
I can forward it to you then.
Okay. We're on to department heads. Tammy, from,
Hello. I have a short EMA report, a very short comm report. This is from Mike today. Work continues on the county hazard mitigation plan, currently surveying towns and status of projects. Second item was the notice of funding opportunity for FY24 Homeland Security Grant was released last night, and MEMA is currently reviewing it. There was a 10% reduction in the reward to the state, which will obviously trickle down into the county. But they haven't determined exactly what that looks like currently. And finally, the solar eclipse, we survived that. It was a huge success for Somerset County. Town of Jackman and surrounding areas were all at capacity with visitors that day. DOT numbers are estimating about 20,000 people came into the Jackman region. The only issue all day was the traffic, as everyone attempted to head south after the eclipse.
John?
At one point, it was 5 hours estimated from Jackman just to Skowhegan. And the sheriff can attest to that too, because you can. And then the last thing was AT&T Wireless reported an increase of over 99,000 wireless calls that day just in their system, so that doesn't say anything about T-Mobile and everybody else. And on the comm side, as was mentioned, we are celebrating Telecommunicator Week. Just want to thank my staff for their hard work and dedication. They've been working a lot of hours as we've been short-staffed. Fortunately, we're turning the curve on that. And then the last thing I have is Friday night, we're going to be down to Scalpentus, passing out coloring books.
I'm sorry,
Oh, good. And teach your kids about 911. I dress up as Ray Fox, which turns into a 6-foot fox. Got a cell phone and everything, so the kids really like that entertainment. So that's what we'll be doing Friday night.
Great, thank you. Major Mike?
And I'll be dressing up as a deputy Friday night and serving popcorn, as I already alluded to, but that's something I've been doing now for the last 7 or 8 years. So I think it's really important that we have that visibility and presence in the community. So on the jail side, I mean, we're continuing to move in the right direction staffing-wise. We're down to 5 openings. We can't seem to break through that barrier and get below 5. We'll have a flurry of applications, and then all of a sudden it will dry up for a few weeks, but we're still moving. We have 2 people in training right now. They're getting ready to join a shift. So, you know, other than the usual hiccups and bumps in the road with inmates and staffing, it's kind of business as usual. And as the county administrator alluded to, we're still in talks with the Teamsters for a new corrections officer contract. Seems like we are fairly close to an agreement. I mean, that was my read from the last meeting, and hopefully we'll be there soon, which I think will ultimately help us with recruiting and retention.
Quick question for you, Mike, in terms of applications and hiring. You guys don't mandate the COVID shots, correct?
No.
Because that is a question of people that are interested.
No, we never have, and I don't anticipate that ever.
Okay, because that is an inhibitor for some of the folks that are interested, because they won't do it.
And maybe, you know, and maybe, you know, this is more directed toward Deputy Administrator Dickey. Maybe that's something we should make known in our job posting. I hadn't had that question posed for quite a while, so I didn't know what.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I've had several people that asked me about the corrections positions, but that was an inhibitor, and I told them I didn't do that, so maybe something probably would
Unless,
be.
you know, unless the federal government does a 180 and mandates it for everyone, I don't anticipate that mandating for any of our.
Any other questions, comments? All set? Thank you. Tanya?
No updates today, just to say everything still is going smoothly, no issues, no concerns.
Have you had a lot of deeds brought in to be processed, or?
Yes, we have. It's about half and half as far as paper documents versus e-filing. E-filing might be starting to take over. Some of the other counties are experiencing no paper documents, all e-filing. So it's kind of interesting to watch that happening.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Good, thank you. David?
We've taken the next step with trying to get the gravel pit in Lexington licensed. The paperwork was sent to the LUPC. They've accepted it. It's made their list of paperwork that they're working on. It's not going to be complete yet. We haven't paid the fee yet. They haven't told us how much that will be. So when they give us that amount, we've got to pay the fee for them to process it fully. And I think there's going to be a couple odds and ends for papers they still might need, but still, it's another step in the process.
Getting closer. While you're on, what was the,
Yeah, I'll bring it up to you so you can read it. We are going to go with the lowest bid with Paris Farmers Union.
that's your recommendation?
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
we bought from them before.
Okay.
Is it all the same stuff?
It didn't specify which brand they had. We asked for a certain quality. The DOT standard is a US 15 fabric, 315 is the number on it. But there are different companies that make equivalents. So we say either US 315 fabric, equal or greater in what it does.
And where's this going?
This is, some of it's going up to the back road in Lexington. I think some of it's going up to the northern road up to Tom Hegan. We got a couple different projects going, so.
That road in Lexington got a lot of travel in the eclipse, more than I've ever seen. But
Yeah,
nice place
that's
to
what I
be.
heard.
That's where we went. It was really fantastic up by the dam.
Yeah, I was up north, just east of Jackman, between Jackman and Rockwood, and I did not get home Monday night. I tried. I took an hour to go 2 miles, and I decided I'm just gonna go back to camp, and I'll sleep there. Tuesday was a vacation day anyway, so it worked out.
Yeah, I've never seen bumper-to-bumper traffic on 201 before. Hopefully never again.
Hopefully never again, I agree.
I know a lot of people that came up, they may want to move here after they've seen how beautiful it was.
Maybe.
Everyone was so friendly, it was a very communal event.
The traffic's just like it is in DC.
Yeah, the traffic is just another day at the beach for them.
The morning of that on Route 7, I took the Newport exit because I had to go to Bangor, get back in the Newport around 9 o'clock. It took me 45 minutes to get off that off ramp because of the traffic on Route 7 going up through the
Did you drive your electric vehicle in there?
I have a Prius. I don't like it.
Moving on. Unfinished business, none. New business, resolution 2475 to approve the finding of facts for the Cray Palmyra abatement appeal and send the findings to the town of Palmyra. Shall we have a motion to table to the next agenda?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Let's go. Resolution 2476, to pay from county benefit funds the following awarded matching grant amounts. $4,150 to the Dead River Snowmobile Riders as approved on January 3rd, 2024, and $3,780 to the East Madison Historical Society as approved on December 20th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Let's go. Resolution 2477 to recognize April 14th through April 20th as 2024 as the National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Somerset County. I have a proclamation here. I am happy to read to you. Somerset County, Maine proclamation. National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, April 14th through the 20th, 2024, whereas emergencies that require the response of law enforcement, fire, or emergency medical services can occur at any time, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of deputies, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our first responders is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who who contact the Somerset Communications Center, and whereas Somerset's public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact of our citizens with emergency services, and whereas the dispatchers, our Somerset County Communications Center, have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, therefore be it resolved that the Somerset County Commissioners recognize the week of April 14th through 2024 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Somerset County, Maine, to honor the man and woman whose diligence and professionalism keep our communities and citizens safe.
So moved.
Second.
Amen.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Very good. Capital reserve expenditures to authorize moving of $10,000 from the communications personnel line to capital to be spent upon upgrading network connections to towers in Fairfield and the West Forks.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Good. Resolution 2479 to approve spending $30,000 from reserve account 439-4 to create a satellite-based network redundancy system.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
This is down from 1.5 million, the way, am I right on this?
So years ago, the county raised $850,000, so that's been sitting in the account. After COVID, when the county went back to look at this process of running the real dark fiber, it would be well over 1.5.
So we'll have that, we actually have the extra money which we can use.
That's right, you can use it to offset other capital expenses.
Great.
Didn't we use 50 of that already to offset? I believe we did last time.
We transferred 350 out to do a server upgrade, yes.
I move the question.
Well, it's not about moving the question, it's about if there's any more discussion. If you move the
That was
question,
the point.
but, John, if you move the question, we have to vote on it. This way, we don't have to vote on it. So we're not,
Yeah, because when you do that, then Robert has to explain to us the process that's going to take longer.
So, seeing that there's no more discussion, all in favor? It's a go, thank you. Resolution 2480 to approve the spending $18,000 from capital account 4395 for renovations to the county extension office, remove carpeting and replace with vinyl flooring.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none.
Question.
Oh, one question, we have discussion.
With discussion, wouldn't it be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more expensive, but warranty on highway limited versus vinyl in terms of years, having to replace it again? Wondering if it would be a better option to go with like a highway limited, pay a bit more.
I don't know.
If I could interject here, I let the staff at the extension office do all the research they wanted to do.
Okay.
And these are they looked at hardwood laminate, and this was the recommendation that they came back with. Since it's their 9 to 5 office, Monday through Friday, I'm deferring to their recommendations, and they did a lot of good due diligence, so.
Any further discussion?
And they want this done tomorrow, so.
I thought they wanted it done yesterday.
You want to die on that cross.
I'm not gonna, I just was questioning
It's a good question, Scott, thank you.
Vinyl flooring is a lot less.
Well, there's vinyl flooring out there that is commercial rated, that has 10 and 15-year warranties.
Yeah.
Not sure which one they're picking, but.
It might be a lot better looking.
All in favor?
This whole floor.
It's a go. Unorganized territory, to award the bid for geotextile fabric to be used on gravel road maintenance repair in the unorganized territory.
I move we accept the bid from Paris Farmers Union in the amount of $24,900, if I have that right?
Yep,
I gave that up to Robert, so.
that's what I
It's
have.
right here.
24.9 is what I have.
24,900 is what we have.
Second.
First, second, and no discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Warrants, Resolution 2482, to approve the treasurer's warrant for general fund, Somerset County Jail, unorganized territories, and TIF community benefit, for a total of $653,585.92.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Go. Miscellaneous discussion items, commissioners only. None?
None for me.
Okay, very good. And now we'll take a recess to execute documents. What is this? Document? These documents.
It was Robert. So we actually not adjourning and then some.
Maybe you're a good path.
Go chase down. They don't want to run.
Well, maybe we just went on recess.
So do you have like a little, because of bedding?
I'll put the resolution.
Oh, we need to read this.
You too. Thank you.
That's it. So you made it through the Celtics game?
Yeah, that was a great time. It was good. I got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. We
I was used to it.
the next day.
Very bad.
It's nice.
There you go. Commissioners decide.
Oh, right. So what?
So I need your expertise again. My ceiling in my mudroom is looking suspicious, so I sort of poked it with my finger.
We're gonna have to discuss routine.
Yeah, so I went up in my attic space, which is, it's kind of hard to describe. It's actually, it's sort of a barn-like environment, so it's open to the, I mean, it's under the roof, but it's not closed in that sense, but it's covered with plywood, it's insulated. So I ripped off the plywood, and I had an extensive swirl.
Yeah.
Extensive. And not only that, had a lot of wires running across, and they chewed it down to,
It was fun.
do I replace that wire, or do I just take it?
This is first time going to.
No, electrician.
So it's good.
It's a very smelly job.
I'd say the safest thing to do would be to replace it.
Yeah.
We need an electrician.
How much of
Ahead of us.
how much of a chunk of insulation is missing on it?
It's just all ruined. I pulled it all out as I call it.
Oh, really?
Had to crawl in the steam. There's so many little square foot walls there.
Oh,
They look like raisins.
yeah,
Definitely not nice.
Recesses in school.
Fortunately, I've been at pretty far.
yeah. No scene about how they were getting in.
I don't know what happened.
It's not what Robert dreamed it would be.
Something of foam. It'll be more resistant to roots. I got it. No, we haven't adjourned yet.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is a new ballgame.
Yeah, yeah, we're just cranking on the professionalism.
So, there is no executive session.
Sit through back.
I think next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
Look at him, hold my thought.
That's all signed, signed, sealed, delivered.
Sign them all?
Yes.
Why you pay for more?
I know, that's right.
Moving around.
Screwing mine.
I'm not gonna be here for the next.
Stab in the pen.
I didn't have.
Oh, the next budget meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm going to Utah.
I had PT yesterday.
that's right, yes.
Yeah.
So
I had the PT the day after.
Well,
When's our next meeting?
so 29th, Monday?
A little bit sore, but
That's our next,
it's
no,
small.
when's our next county commission meeting?
Oh, the first Wednesday, May,
Yeah, you gotta do
May
it.
1st, May Day.
Get who's
Yeah,
next.
I'll miss the,
scratches broken in, everything else.
The abatement issue.
Just go on.
I'll help you, I have some, I'll
Hardly
make it.
any pain other
I
than.
mean, I'm not,
There's our proclamation,
Right
there's
after CG,
that,
the day after.
and there's the warrants, right
I'm pushing it.
there, warrant.
Oh, thank you.
Warrant proclamation.
Excellent.
And-
you didn't have to go out of witness comp too.
Yeah. So, with recess over, motion to adjourn. All in favor? Good. That's right. Oh. You got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good, we're done, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'll chat with you at some point,
Oh, yeah, okay.
all that freaking mess in our town.